Yes, a hot dog is a sandwich. Welcome to Pause It For Me, Season 3. We've now made it to Season 3, 20 episodes per season.
Woo.
We made it through 40 episodes. Only took us like 38 or 39 episodes to realize that I could turn off the fridge, not by unplugging it from behind, but by switching off the breaker. Hooray for me.
Well, now you know.
Not that I ever pulled it out from behind, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life is all about experiences.
Yeah.
So there's something new this season. I've always been able to see Andrew's lovely face during these podcast recordings, but now you, the audience, will get to as well.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So you can see us in all our glory and all our reactions to everything pertaining to chatting about these movies.
Now, I'll say this much. We're probably not going to do this for every episode, or at least I'm not committing to it, because that's a lot of weight to put on the shoulders, because it takes like 3 to 4 times longer to set up this podcast if we're doing 2-angle video than just doing audio. So, not to mention the lighting as well. So it's a lot, what I like to do with the podcast is I like to finish the movie and then immediately record the episode. Mm-hmm. And when we just have the microphone sitting on the table, that's not a big deal. We can set it up in advance or we can set it up in a hurry. But this is like clogging up our living room here.
Yeah, well, that's why we hadn't done it for the first 40-some episodes.
Exactly. We had just done the cups, which are still here, by the way. You can't really see them.
Just a little more low-key.
Yeah, and I've got a water going, and I've also just cracked open a cranberry radler from Perth Brewery. So cheers to that. Good. Thanks for, it's not a sponsor, but...
it could be.
Yeah. So you can still see the cups. But in addition to the extra workload of setting everything up, it also takes much longer to edit if I'm cutting a multicam back and forth. So
it is what you do.
Yeah, we're going to reduce I do it all day, and then I have to do it on the weekend too, which is fine. It's fun. It's a self-imposed challenge. But it just means, if it takes too long, then that means less episodes. So I think at season 1, we were aiming for like hour-long episodes, talking about each movie for about 30 minutes. And then we ended up doing most episodes, I think, were like hour and a bit. Mm-hmm. Season 2, we were aiming for 45-minute episodes, talking about, instead of 2 movies, 1 movie for 45 minutes. So shorter episodes, but longer movie discussions. And aiming for 45 minutes usually got us to like an hour. So I think now we'll go back to 30 minutes per movie, 30-minute episodes. And then as a result, we'll probably end up hitting 45 minutes, which was the goal last season. But shorter episodes means shorter turnaround per episode and less editing for me. So that's nice.
Well, the thing is I don't know if we consciously are like, oh, we have to talk for a certain amount of time. We just talk as long as we feel is necessary.
No, I'm very conscious of it. This is what you don't see because there's no video podcast. It's like we'll be 15 minutes into a discussion about King Kong, and I'm looking at the timer like, if we're doing if we're doing a 45-minute episode, we got half an hour to go, and I'm running out of things to say. So
I'm never thinking about it.
The King Kong episode, I think, was one of our shortest, just because I was like, I don't know, I'm bored with this movie. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say.
That movie was kind of boring.
Yeah, but it's always on my mind. How long we're going.
That's the thing about picking movies that we feel like we should be watching for the sake of watching them versus movies like we're really excited to see, because we're going to have a lot more to say about that usually.
Yeah. And speaking of which, we watched a couple things. We've watched several things since our last few episodes because we were doing episodes that were interviewing other directors, other filmmakers. Mm-hmm. So we've been watching a ton of stuff, not all of which we've wanted to do an episode on, but... Mm-hmm. We watched recently the Wes Anderson short films that came out on Netflix. So those are The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, The Swan, The Ratcatcher, and Poison. And unfortunately, we watched those a couple of weeks ago, and so they're not quite as fresh. But I had some opinions on these coming out of it. Coming right out the gate, we had some nice talks, and I was like, man, I wish we had been rolling on our discussion here. So I'll probably to refresh my memory. I think I'm going to have to lean on my Letterboxd reviews a little bit because I wrote those when it was fresh in my mind. But to start off, I mean, we did a little tease. We got the Wes Anderson collection here, which is a book that I gave Hannah a number of years ago as a Christmas gift.
I think when we were dating, so it's over 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll throw it to you to start, because we've talked about Wes Anderson plenty. We've talked about Wes Anderson plenty on other podcasts, namely Carl and Gabe Go to the Movies. But I want to ask, like, how did you first discover Wes Anderson? When did you first discover that you were in like with Wes Anderson?
Yeah, so
or his movies, at least, not him as a person with his goofy looking shoes.
Yeah, but I mean, the goof is part of the charm, right?
Sure.
So I had actually never heard of Wes Anderson prior to film school. He just wasn't on my radar. He's not mainstream. Never heard of him. And then in film school, of course, that's a place you're going to hear about, a little more avant-garde type stuff, a little more less mainstream.
Auteurs, niche directors.
Yeah, and I heard people talking about like Grand Budapest Hotel, I think had like just came out when we were in film school. And so that was the big talk, and about how special his camera work is, where he has a lot of like knolling, a lot of symmetry in his frames and stuff. And it sounded really interesting to me. I love aesthetic. So I definitely was drawn to watch movies because, obviously I want to engage in movies that my peers are interested in. I felt really dumb starting film school. I thought I had like a good understanding of cinema, and then a lot of my peers were talking about all these kinds of movies that I hadn't seen before. So it was a little bit like playing catch up over those course of those years. I made a long list of movies that I felt like I had to see, and I tackled a lot of them, but not all of them.
What would you say was your favorite movie? What do you think your favorite movie was going into film school? BRTF.
I don't know. Like
Willy Wonka, maybe?
Willy Wonka, Back to the Future, Napoleon Dynamite.
Okay, so not bad choices.
No.
It's not like you were coming in being like, my favorite movie is The Lone Ranger. With Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp, where a horse drinks beer and burps.
Like, I still saw mainstream movies. I wasn't like totally out of it. It's not like I was Amish or anything. Mm-hmm. But I like went into it thinking like, yeah, I know movies. And then like having not seen like The Godfather or Rocky or like any of like these like classics. And I was like, oh man, like I thought I knew, but I didn't. And so they were talking about Wes Anderson. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I have to watch Wes Anderson. And so I watched the Grand Budapest Hotel. And I was floored. And I was like, okay, I have to see more of these movies. So then over the course of like a couple of years, I made it my mission to slowly make my way through his filmography list, and every single movie I watched, it just made me like this director more, and his sense of style and everything. And I've since rewatched a lot of his movies. I've been able to see some of them in theater, like French Dispatched, his latest one, Asteroid City. And so it was such a joy to be able to see these short films come out, because at this point, I've seen almost everything he's made, even the short films, the H&M commercials with the train and stuff. So it's been a really great journey, but having one of his best things, having seen that first, I don't know. I mean, Grand Budapest Hotel, that's definitely one of his best. But I mean, I still really enjoyed. I think maybe the second thing I saw was Rushmore, and that's possibly why it's close to my heart in some ways, is because it was fresh and new to me. I don't know why I didn't start, or maybe I did start with Bottle Rocket. I don't remember, but I felt like when I saw Rushmore, I'm like, this is for me.
That's really interesting that you started with Grand Budapest. I think I started with Royal Tenenbaums. Okay. I'm looking across the room at the paintings now. I think I saw Royal Tenenbaums first, and I was like, whoa, that was cool.
It's great, eh?
That was like a little unique, right? They do title cards in that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty enamored with that, and I was like, this is a very interesting movie. I like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after that, I saw The Life Aquatic, and I didn't like it as much.
Yeah.
And then I think, yeah, again, I'm turning my head away from the microphone because I'm looking across the room, but I think after that, I maybe saw Moonrise Kingdom, and I was like, kind of middle of the road. Yeah. And then I saw Grand Budapest, and I was like, okay, we're back.
Sure,
we're back to awesome. And then you showed me Rushmore, and I didn't like it. Really at all. It took multiple watchings of Rushmore to start to understand what was good about it.
I don't know. I identify with Max Fisher personally, and I see qualities of Max Fisher in you, and don't take that the wrong way, because some people don't like him. But he's walking away.
So now you don't need to describe that, because...
Still for the
video podcast.
Yeah. For the so many listening, not on video, you know?
Okay, I'm back. So here we have a painting. Do you want to intro this presumably this might be some of our audience members' first time hearing about this, because we're now in visual territory, but do you want to talk about that?
When we started dating, at that point I had seen a good amount of Wes Anderson's filmography, if not all of it. Andrew, having known that I was interested in Wes Anderson, decided to make me a Rushmore painting for my birthday. And then every year after that, it kind of became a tradition that he would make me a Wes Anderson painting for my birthday, and now he's kind of locked into it. Well, it's after like multiple years.
It's nice because it kind of represents how many years we've been together, you know. And I did it kind of on a whim at first, because your birthday came when, you know, we hadn't been dating for that long, and we were in a very busy season at the time. So I was like, what can I get her for her birthday? I'll get her Firefly on DVD. So I told you up front, I was like, I got you kind of a lame gift. I got you a TV show that you've never seen before. I don't know if you'll like it. Whatever.
Your heart was in the right place, though, because you knew that I liked Buffy. And that's by
true,
Joss Whedon, and Firefly was also by Joss Whedon. So it wasn't like it was like out of left field, you know.
And I had seen Firefly, so I was recommending it. It wasn't like I was like, pick something off the shelf at random and here you go. Right. And then after we got less busy, I was like, okay, I need to show this lady how much she means to me and how much I want to spoil her. So I wanted to make something handmade and something
so sweet.
a little more specific. But it wasn't that cool. What
do you mean?
Well, let me explain. I kind of plagiarized it at the time. Fine. But I didn't really know what I was doing.
Nice.
I was just trying to paint something fun. I didn't know that I would be doing this for so many years. Now I come up with the designs just based on like looking at a reference photo from the movie. Mm-hmm. But at the time,
those are your best ones.
Yeah, at the time, and the first couple that I made, I just typed in like Rushmore minimalist poster, and I just kind of like copied it. I'm pretty embarrassed about that now, but it's not like I'm gonna burn it and redo it.
You're not George Lucas.
You kind of ruin the sentimental value.
Yeah.
So you know what? Speaking of George Lucas, let's go on a tangent right now. Just upon that topic, right? Because like everybody knows that the whole thing with George Lucas is that he made Star Wars and then revised it. And, you know, he came up with the special editions and changed it.
And he thought it wasn't good enough.
The DVD editions and changed it, and then the Blu-ray editions and then changed it again. Mm-hmm. And up until this point, I was kind of like, you know, I kind of understand George, but you just leave well enough alone, right? But then I was listening to the interview between Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino recently. One of the single pieces of film-related content that really locked me into wanting to become a filmmaker. I was listening to that, and they were telling the story of George Lucas showing the first rough version of Star Wars without any music to his filmmaker friends, and how all of them were kind of like, sorry to hear that, George. You know, you really kind of wasted your time on this, and man, that sucks for you, you know. And the only one of that group who kind of saw something special in it was Steven Spielberg.
Sure.
And so putting myself in that mindset of like, putting all your eggs in this Star Wars basket of this weird script that, very few people believed in, and the actors on set were complaining about, and Alec Guinness thought it was stupid, and then you show it to your friends and they're like, oh, that sucks for you, man. And then you're so unconfident in how it's going to do when it premieres that you go on vacation when it premieres, which is what happened.
That's funny.
Putting myself in that position, I'm like, I understand a lot more where George Lucas was coming from and wanting to change it, because he was probably going into that release being like, oh man, I'm so stupid. Why did I do everything this way? Like, oh, I wish I had more time to change it. I wish I had more money to change it, because like it wasn't like another movie where maybe like everybody is interviewed after the fact and they're like, yeah, we all knew we were making something special, right? Like happens with some projects. It's like in the moment, it felt like a pile of dog do,
Yeah.
So I understand a lot more George Lucas wanting to change it a ton. I don't agree with it, but I get it.
I get it as a creative looking back on your past work and being like, oh, why did I do it like that? But I think like, the whole point of art is, to create something personal that represents something in a certain time in your life. Yeah. And I think like not making it available to the public as it was and being like, no, this is the definitive version is like, I don't like, it's one thing to be like, hey, I wasn't happy with it as is. I would like to change this, but I think like you should still have the different versions available. It's
kind of an anti-archivist point of view, which is not something I really agree with.
Yeah, I'm all for like changing and remixing art. That's great. But like being like, yeah, this didn't exist. Let's forget about this. I don't agree with.
So speaking of remixing art, that was a theme that I was thinking about a lot during these Wes Anderson short films.
Okay.
On the topic of, why one chooses to adapt something that's a novel or a short story and make it into a film. Mm-hmm. What is it that you're going to use about the film medium that's going to add a lot to this story here? And I have different answers of how well Wes Anderson accomplished that for each of the 4 shorts. So let's start with the main one, the one that came out first, the one that was the longest, the wonderful story of Henry Sugar. Okay, yes. I'm not going to cut that out. I'm going to leave that in, and it's going to be awesome. People are going to laugh, damn it.
It is great. So the wonderful world of
story.
Henry.
Not cutting that out either.
Is it story?
Yeah.
In my mind, it's like Wonderful World.
Well, you can call it the Wonderful World if you want to.
See, that makes more sense because it's alliteration.
Are you thinking of the busy world of Richard Scarry?
Yeah. I mean, Wes Anderson should adapt that next,
Sure. So I'll start out because my review of this wasn't too flowery. It was just kind of being happy that it existed. So what I wrote was 4 out of 5 stars. God bless Wes Anderson for doing his own thing and mastering the style of combining unique aspects of storybooks and theater. And an ad just opened on Letterboxd. So that's enough of that. Yeah, so I thought it was good. What about you?
Yeah, what I really enjoyed about it, I mean, what I like about him choosing to adapt things, normally he's the one writing his own screenplays with, a colleague of his.
Sure.
What I like about him adapting Roald Dahl is it was clearly something very personal to him when he was younger.
Agreed.
He's adapted more than one Roald Dahl story at this point. So even though it wasn't his writing, he obviously felt very connected to it as a director. So taking that on as a director, it's going to feel very personal to him because he already has preconceived notions about what these characters look like and everything relating to that. Like almost from the mind of a kid is, you read this when you're a kid, like what do you picture in your head? And like it's that to the page, which is so great. And I love, we were watching the behind the scenes video of it and he talked about how it was like almost like a live theatrical performance for British television. And I think that's really cool. The way I saw it in my head was it was like a live action storybook. It was like an interactive game, like one of those like where you like flip the page and there's like a little animatic of like
Toy Story CD-ROM or whatever.
Yeah. it had that beautiful quality to it where it had like these lovely tableau images where like, it's pretty minimalistic and it had like the character walking in and out of the frame and everything. And I just loved everything about it. It was stunning.
Agreed. The storybook aspect was what appealed to me the most. And just for the sake of it, I will finish my review. I wrote, God bless Wes Anderson for doing his own thing and mastering the style of combining unique aspects of storybooks and theater while rolling them together in the way that only film can accomplish. And what I meant by that was the standout visual aspect of this for me was all the sets moving in and out, scrolling out of the way on wheels, and then the actor either walks forward or even stays in place, and then other sets move in behind him. Now that's something I've seen done in theater, but with theater, you can usually really only do that like once every 10 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Or else it's
Otherwise you see like too much of the artifice.
Yeah, and like which can be fun sometimes.
Oh yeah,
but like. When we saw White Christmas at Shaw Festival, like they would roll out their sets and roll in new ones, and they wouldn't always pull the curtain. Sometimes you would see it, and it was really cool. But they want to make it worth it, so they wheel in that new set, and then you're there for like 10 minutes or whatever before they move to a different one. But what was so great about this that utilized the film medium to its full potential was being able to do that so many times and whip the camera around and like still walk through the sets and then have a cut to another area where you can do that even more times in a short time span, right? That I felt was a really good way of utilizing film to do something that you can't do in theater. Or I mean, maybe you could, but you would need a massive theater space, and not everybody in the theater would be getting the same experience because they're sitting somewhere different in relation to the stage. Whereas with this, like the actor's looking directly at the camera, so you feel his eyes piercing you. You feel like he's delivering right to you. Is again something that you really only get from film.
Right. I mean, it's like when you're thinking back to watching theater, it's like you have a front row seat.
Yeah.
To a theater experience.
Right. It's like what they told us in college, in TV broadcasting, when you're switching cameras, you want to give the viewer the best seat in the house for sports or like whatever. Same kind of principle.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the great thing about cinema, right?
Right. So I thought that Henry Sugar was great.
Yeah.
But ironically, even though it was a short film, I thought it was a little long.
I don't know. I enjoyed every minute of it, I would say.
I generally enjoy a story within a story aesthetic, and I think that Grand Budapest did that really well. But this, and Asteroid City also did that quite well. But
he does it a lot, Royal Tenenbaums, right. French Dispatch.
Well, like I like the way that they did in Asteroid City, although I found myself kind of caring about the story outside of the story, like in the play. Putting on the play a bit more than the inner story with the color. But with this, with Henry Sugar, I just felt, like the inner story we're just getting a little too far removed from the Henry Sugar story. Like I understand it's all context, but you can just keep going. You can go as deep as you want and provide further and further context on whatever. But eventually I'm going to be like, okay, what's going on with Henry Sugar? Can we get back to him?
I guess you could say that about any story, though.
Go on.
Well, it's the same with any, novel, movie. You could say that about like Pulp Fiction or something is, sometimes you're connecting to certain characters, like the main character, more than the side characters that provide a little bit of color to the world, but you just don't connect with them as much. And you're like, hey, well, whatever, let's get the axe. But, to someone like Wes Anderson, they were integral to his adaptation of the material.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's what the original material is like, then I understand it, and that's fine. I didn't dislike it. I liked it. I was just, at a certain point, I was like, okay. When are we going to get back to it here?
For sure.
Which is what made the other three shorts so refreshing to me, was how short they were.
They're concise to the point, yeah.
Yeah. So, any other closing thoughts on Henry Sugar? I mean, but we'll maybe talk about our overall thoughts on the actors, the shared actors in all four of them at the end. But any other Henry Sugar thoughts?
It's so interesting that it didn't get a theatrical release. I think it was really lovely to see in a home setting. But I think it would have looked beautiful on the screen as well. And I really loved the costuming choices of Henry Sugar. I really love his red pajamas against like a blue backdrop when he's throwing money.
It was kind of interesting, like sitting in a bedroom and watching it on a TV. Because we watched them on your birthday weekend. We went to a little Airbnb and did some Hannah-centric activties.
It's a great way to spend the day eating delicious homemade at a store.
Store-made.
Yeah, restaurant donuts and
Mavericks,
enjoying some really great movies.
Yeah. So it was interesting watching them on a TV in a bedroom and knowing like that's how they were made to be watched. Normally, like you watch a Wes Anderson movie or any movie and you're like, yeah, the director's intention was to have you watch this in a theater. But then watching this, it was like, nope, it's Netflix. This is how it is.
I still think it had a lovely theatrical quality to it.
For sure. Yeah. So The Swan was the second one.
Yeah, you had some bones to pick about
I picked a few bones.
Yeah.
I did. So my review of The Swan is as follows. Okay, here it comes. And 3, 2, 1. Pop, pop, pop. Oh, actually, this review is kind of long, so I'll just kind of speed through it. Well, this does quite the opposite of Henry Sugar, using the advent of film to help tell this story when really only getting halfway there to what the film medium allows you to do. Well, I guess it's not really my thing. This portrayal of the story could have easily been a small set play, but I find that making it into a short film adds very little, as they appear to be just reading the story verbatim. No one is really acting, there's very few visual elements, and the camera doesn't provide much of a different perspective than what the audience would get just watching the story play out on a stage. Long story short, I'm not sure why Wes Anderson chose to adapt this story if he wasn't going to do anything particularly creative with it. It's not inherently unentertaining, but I just find that my imagination would come up with something more interesting on the visual side of it, just reading the story myself than watching someone read it on the screen. How do you feel about that?
Well, I said this to you in person, and I feel like you're like saying it like it's a bad thing. Like there's, it's pretty minimal. It's like a play, and it's like that's how he envisioned it. That's how he wanted to do it. Is if you've seen some of his other short films, is a lot of them are like that, where it's pretty minimalistic, where you have like one sort of main character, pretty minimal background, minimal storytelling. I think a lot of his feature films are very, very elaborate with a lot of characters and moving parts and sets. So to see him do a demonstration of minimalism in film and how can we convey this story in an interesting way, but in a very minimal way than he normally does, I found it to be an interesting exercise. And not every piece of work that a creator makes has to be the best of the best. It can just be an interesting creative exercise in how can I tackle this differently? A lot of his movies are super colorful. The Swan was pretty beige in its palette. And it was just really interesting to see something maybe a little bit different than you would normally see from him.
Yeah. So this is pretty much the discussion that we had. As an experiment in minimalism, I'll respect it. I just found it kind of strange.
Sure.
The best part was when he was lying down on the train tracks. That felt the most engaging.
Definitely.
But when they were just walking through the hay maze,
I liked it.
And just kind of describing this, like he's just reading the story and nothing was really happening on screen, and like a character would come up and be like, he handed me this item, and he just like holds out his hands and there's nothing in his hands. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing, but why? Why did you choose to adapt this if you were just going to do it really like bare bones? I guess that's a question for him, but...
to me, it's a creative exercise, like I said. And, I mean, we talked about this specifically with the rat catcher, which you enjoyed more, is they did the same sort of thing where they were holding out pretend objects. And the way I described it, it was like a story time for children where... there's like, a librarian reading the book and then some adults are like acting out all the parts where they're like, oh, I'm doing this, and oh, I'm doing that, blah, blah, blah. And to me, that's just like a fun way of telling that story. I'm not saying every story has to be like that, but I thought it was an interesting way to tackle that particular story.
I get that much. I guess where I'm leaning is just like, if you want to do experiment with minimalist storytelling, I think that's cool, but maybe write something new instead of adapting something that was maybe like not meant to be told in a minimalist way that way. I don't know, because it's like, if I think about, you know, a novel or a short story that you like or that I like, I don't know, it's like, if you were a fan of Willy Wonka and they adapted a new Willy Wonka movie, and it's like, well, the director chose to shoot it minimalist, and so you just have to imagine the chocolate factory. It's not actually there. They didn't build any sets. You, as a fan of Willy Wonka, might be like, not sure how I feel about that.
I see what you're saying, but also, you know, since we have seen adaptations of Willy Wonka,
right? It's a bad example.
Extremism, it would be actually really interesting to see it told from a very simple way, because Willy Wonka is a character that's larger than life.
Sure. Bad example. I guess I view it as the same kind of artistic change that would be like when they were thinking about adapting Harry Potter and they were going to do it in America with all American actors.
Well,
it would be like, okay, you might, regardless of if it's good or if it accomplishes what you were set out to do, you might be pissing off some people who really liked the original, you know? Like,
I guess.
If they pulled something like that with, like, Danny the Champion of the World, which is another Roald Dahl story that I read as a kid that I really liked, and they adapted it and they were like, yeah, you don't actually see any of the pheasants. All the pheasants are pretend. I'd be like...
Well, he didn't do that. You know, Fantastic Mr. Fox was pretty literal for the most part, so we'll see.
Well, I think there's much of the Fantastic Mr. Fox adaptation that was not in the books.
No, I think they added a bit.
Should read it at some point. But I think that closes out our discussion of The Swan. The Ratcatcher, I won't read my Letterboxd review because it's just like, I'm going to think about this one or something like that. But I found that The Ratcatcher built a lot better. You know, its sense of suspense. And it's what I found more interesting related to the minimalism discussion was The Swan was kind of like minimalism across the board. Whereas The Ratcatcher, it was interesting to see what they chose to do with minimalism, what they chose to do with a minimalist take on it, and what they chose not to do with a minimalist take on it. So like The Ratcatcher has to do with rats. There's certain moments where like it's like, oh, he pulled a rat out of his jacket and he holds up the rat and he's not holding anything up. It's like, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And then there's a few minutes later, he pulls another rat out of his jacket. But this time you see the rat and it's just like a statue. It's like a stuffed statue or something, like a puppet that's just standing still. And it's like, that's an interesting choice. Where are they going with this? Then he puts the puppet down, and then it springs to life in stop motion. At that point, they decide, okay, now we're not doing minimalism. Now the rat is represented as a animated moving rat. And in fact, the rat is like speaking the dialogue. And
then he turns into Rafe.
Yeah.
Fiennes.
Yeah, then it started getting really interesting. Yeah, the rat, you know, Rafe Fiennes puts in like some teeth and he becomes the rat in the context of the story.
He was really made to play like some scuzzy weirdo as well.
Yeah.
We were saying that he was like, he would make a great Filch.
Yeah, I saw him. I was like, wow, he's basically Filch from Harry Potter. And you were like, yeah, well, he was Dumbledore, or not Dumbledore. He was
I didn't say that.
No, you said, yeah, well, he was Voldemort instead. And I was like, oh yeah, he is Voldemort. I forgot.
Yeah, he's just that good of an actor.
He's a chameleon.
Yeah.
So I really like The Ratcatcher. I didn't have as many specific thoughts of it.
And the narrator, Richard A08, I'm going to probably butchered his last name, but
Richie A.
I really like that actor, and I think he's perfect for a Wes Anderson film. So
absolutely. I really liked it. And do you have any other thoughts on it? I didn't feel like it had... I found the first half a little confusing, but the second half made up for it in how much it engaged me.
Right. Well, I don't want to just like completely like gush about Wes Anderson and like say that everything he does is like completely perfect, but you know, I have such a soft spot for it that I'm more or less going to say good things about it. The Swan, it was definitely a great demonstration in minimalism, but it wasn't his best. Certainly not. The Ratcatcher was definitely more engaging, and it took sort of the toyetic storytelling qualities, the minimalism, and built upon it to tell a more engaging story. And I definitely think that the Ratcatcher was better
than the Swan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's on par with Poison, which we can.
You think the Ratcatcher's on par with Poison?
Well, maybe we just have to rewatch them.
Okay. I thought you were going to say what I was just thinking, which is that the Ratcatcher was on par with Henry Sugar.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, Poison was great, and why don't we start talking about that? Why don't you give me your take on Poison?
Poison was, in my opinion, the best one, and I was really shocked because I thought that they were going to put all their eggs in the Henry Sugar basket because it was the longest, it was released first, yada yada yada. But I thought Poison was awesome. And that probably speaks a little bit more to the source material, but they also filmed it in a really great way.
Well, yeah, I think it speaks to the source material because it had a very cinematic quality to it already. There was sort of a ticking time bomb for Poison. Yeah. And it had like stakes to it, which maybe with, Henry Sugar, it didn't feel like there was as much stakes. You were just along for the ride for the most part.
That's true. So
for Poison, right away, it's like, okay, this character has a dilemma. There was a very hurried quality to it, which I found really funny. Mm-hmm. Dev Patel, also a really great fit for Wes Anderson films. He has a soft spot for Indian characters. Some of his family friends were Indians, as you can see in some of the earlier movies, like Bottle Rocket. The convenience store that they robbed was owned by the Indian man that, plays little bit parts in some of the earlier movies before he died. So casting an Indian British character was a perfect fit, and Dev Patel has such a great range. He can do drama, comedy, and it's just a really great fit.
Yeah.
And I loved his hurried sense of quality, like the way he would sort of just like scurry in and out of the room and like
his little runs.
Yeah, his little runs and like turning towards the camera and like saying something and then running away. It was just like my favorite part of it.
Yeah, I've seen Dev Patel in many things.
Yes,
I've seen him in Skins. Mm-hmm. I've seen him in
a lot more comedic.
Life of Pi.
Yeah,
I've seen him in the first half that we watched of Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah,
not the second half. But this was the thing that made me be like, okay, Dev Patel is an international treasure.
Of course, yeah.
He was a standout performance in all 4 of these, however many he was in. Mm-hmm. I don't think he was in Ratcatcher or this one. 2 of them. He was a standout performance of all 4 of these.
For sure.
Benedict Cumberbatch was great, but he was great. Yeah. He was a little more monotone, which is
as most Wes Anderson roles that are.
Yeah.
Very monotone.
Ben Kingsley was nice. Great addition.
Also a great fit. Kind of in line with the Ralph Fiennes, kind of a little more theatrically trained British man.
I was psyched to see Ralph Fiennes back in the Wes Anderson chair after Grand Budapest Hotel. Had he been in any since then? I feel like no.
It feels like he should have been.
Yeah. So that was one thing that I really liked about all these shorts was that they used so many of the same actors. It almost felt like you were going to a playhouse for the night.
Exactly.
And they're like, okay, we're going to perform Henry Sugar. And then they do it. And then they're like, thank you. Okay, next up is going to be performance of The Swan, which who is the main actor in The Swan?
That I don't know.
I can't remember his name,
off the top of my head.
I didn't think he was so great.
He was fine. I wouldn't be able to say,
Rupert Friend.
Sure.
Rupert Friend, if you're watching this, I dislike you as an actor. I dislike you as a person. I never want. Hey, I have the floor.
Okay.
I never want you to see you on my television set ever again. Okay? And don't listen to this podcast. Stop it.
You're burning those bridges.
Well, Rupert Friend is no friend to me. I'll tell you that much.
Mm-hmm.
Go on.
So I definitely want to see more of Ralph Fiennes. in his motion pictures, and also more of Dev Patel. And if Ben Kingsley wants to be there, Benedict Cumberbatch wants to do
Ben
a day.
Kingsley wants to be there, he can show up for a day,
Absolutely. I definitely want to see Dev Patel and like all of his future things. It's a great fit.
For sure. Okay, so here's my Letterboxd review, just for context, of Poison. So I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And I wrote, well, damn. Ended with a bang. Probably the best one of the 4. The storytelling, the tension, the artistry, the acting, it's all there. Not much to say other than it was easily the most engaging and entertaining of all the Netflix Dahl-Anderson shorts. Would really love to see him tackle another feature-worthy Dahl story, like Fantastic Mr. Fox. Danny, the Champion of the World, anyone?
Yeah, that'd be great. James and the Giant Peach.
Wow, we already have a perfect James and the Giant Peach adaptation. So
is that for?
Well, it was perfect for a night of watching it on VHS and a sleepover at my friend Tony's house at the time.
Oh, there you go.
So
when I saw the previews on VHSs of that movie as a kid, it scared me. I've never seen it.
It's kind of creepy. It's kind of Nightmare Before Christmas-esque.
Well, it's Roald Dahl is always like that, where it's kind of it's for kids, but it also has kind of a macabre twist to it, like
it's
Matilda,
for kids, but it's not comforting.
Brucey and the Chokey.
Speaking of the Chokey, woof. Our audio is getting choked out right now. Yeah. So that's something that I do find interesting about Roald Dahl stories. Is like, okay, apparently the coffee machine wants to be the subject of this podcast, so we'll just, okay, and there we go. No, a little bit more, and we're done. So, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, like, you have kids, supposedly dying in the chocolate factory. I think that was the intention, right?
That was the implication, but I think it kind of got toned back a bit, where it's like, they're just missing.
Well, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you see them walk out. Which is kind of lame.
That seems like a studio note where it's like, oh, we can't implicate that the children are like killed or missing or anything, so we have to see them leave, I'm sure.
Whatever. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't want to put Roald Dahl on a pedestal either. I was researching Roald Dahl recently, and he seems like an anti-Semite, which is great.
Of that era, that happened a lot. Like great. Coco Chanel was also an anti-Semite, unfortunately.
And as well, I saw that he wrote some short stories that are like adult-oriented. And when I say adult-oriented, I mean like sexual, like deeply sexual.
Oh, interesting.
And I read the plot summaries of them, and they're horrible.
Oh, yeah?
They're like involve like rape and and
That's
they deeply upset me, and it bummed me the heck out.
That's too bad.
That sucks.
Well, it's the same with any artist is, you'll say that you connect to the material, that it's, it's great that you enjoy the art, but usually like there's problems, It happens a lot.
Anyway, so all that to say, Roald Dahl is he's no genius. He's just, he's got some fun, some nice stories and some not so nice stories.
Has some nice stories, and Wes Anderson is a good creative mind, and he is able to adapt them into interesting productions.
Right. So wrapping up, I would say if you're only going to watch one of these 4, I recommend Poison. Which one do you recommend?
Definitely watch Poison. I think The Rat Catcher is worth watching. And, if you're into Benedict Cumberbatch, if you like Wes Anderson, watch all of them. But
sure.
Henry Sugar, yeah.
I would recommend The Swan if you're interested in seeing a story told in a unique, minimalist way that takes a lot of the details out that you would take for granted. That, like, somebody holds up an object and you see the object in their hand. Well, in The Swan,
it's an exercise in imagination.
They just have their empty palms. So that's kind of interesting. So the last question I want to throw at you: how do you respond to people who just like blanket statement hate Wes Anderson, hate his style, and is like, it's just weird. I don't get it. It's too weird.
I understand where they're coming from, but it makes me instantly question their taste in movies just because it's so different from my own. Is they just see something that's different from the mainstream, and it's just they have trouble connecting with it. Or maybe they see it as being weird for just being weird's sake.
It's definitely not.
It's not. It's very deeply personal. Just reading the Wes Anderson collection, you hear all these interviews. Not hear. You read about all these interviews.
You hear them in your mind. They're so visceral.
All these interviews with Wes Anderson about why he chose to do things, and it's usually because it's something that he really likes or something that he really connects to. A lot of the motifs in his movie, like he often uses Brit rock because he really likes Brit rock. Rushmore was shot at his own high school. It was sort of almost about his own experiences in a lot of ways. Him and Owen Wilson about going to boys' school. You know, a lot of these stories are about family dynamics and stuff. You know, a lot of the aspects are not just because, oh, it would be cool to do this. It's like, no, this is his vision of how he wants to tell this story. And he is very exact about how he wants to go about it because he has reasons for why he wants to do things. It's not just to be quirky or weird, but, you know, maybe some people are just not into that. And I guess that's fine, but I find that boring.
Even if it was just for the sake of being quirky and weird, it's like, at least he's doing something that's uniquely his.
Definitely.
You turn on a Wes Anderson movie from the past 10, 15 years, and you can tell it's a Wes Anderson movie. You know? It's like with The Simpsons. You turn on The Simpsons, you know it's The Simpsons because it has such a unique look.
Yeah, the yellow characters and everything.
Yeah, just because it's doing something unique doesn't automatically mean it's weird or bad or like whatever. Like what I haven't loved all of Wes Anderson's movies. In fact, the last several that he's made has not been my favorite. I didn't really like The French Dispatch that much. Asteroid City I thought was fine. But I'm glad that he's back in this sort of storybook realm that he explored a bit in Fantastic Mr. Fox, a little bit with Isle of Dogs, with the stop motion.
I think they've always had sort of a Doll-House quality to them, like Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah, and like the ship on Life Aquatic and all that. But I think that the subject matter is important to pair his style with. And I think this is perfect subject matter to do that with. Like Henry Sugar, a Roald Dahl story, something that's like kind of childish with a little bit of an adult edge that's a little bit macabre but a little bit comforting, and is told with that storybook point of view of like literally somebody telling a story is, I think, the perfect mesh of his style with content.
For sure. I think he's at his best when there's a lot of heart to it, when there's, you know, a lot of angst, a lot of family dynamics. Like some of my favorite movies of his are about, you know, coping with grief or just growing up or, you know, having trouble interacting with your family members, stuff like that. That's some of the best ones, like Royal Tenenbaums, Rushmore, etc. So.
Right. Well, I think we went a little bit longer than intended, but you know what? It's fine. It just means more editing for me and more content for you.
It's easy to talk about Wes Anderson at length. You know, I'm not going to say like every movie of his is my favorite, but I enjoy watching every movie, and I would definitely rewatch every single movie because they're so interesting. And, you know, I'm not going to say that his style is completely 100% original. And it's steal like an artist. You know, you take from 100 of your favorite artists. Everything he does is inspired by someone that's came before him. But the unique blend of what he is doing is wholly him.
Yeah.
For sure.
You can see where he's picked up some inspiration.
Yeah.
I mean,
Kubrick, Orwell.
We rewatched Amelie recently, and I was floored by Amelie. I had seen it before, but when I watched it again this time, I was like, wow, this is like close to a masterpiece. And you
need to let me pick movies more.
It felt very Wes Anderson, like proto Wes Anderson. And I let you pick movies all the time. You picked the movie,
and they're always great choices.
You picked the movie that we're gonna talk about in the Christmas episode, which was Eloise. And if you're trying to tell me that was a great choice,
listen.
Well, you just wait, audience members.
That was a nostalgic choice. It wasn't like, okay, we're gonna sit down or we're gonna watch this movie, it's gonna be a great cinematic experience.
You know what? Save it for the next episode.
All right.
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Not to shut you up. I love you.
I love you too.
Okay. Thanks so much for listening. And if you have any love to give, send it to my wife. She deserves it. And you will see us next time. I promise. Bye.
Bye.